much, everybody.
I gotta go. You get the. Hey. I'll move over so you don't get the.
Roberta, whenever you're ready.
I didn't want some.
Brush my teeth.
She wasn't coming, or was she giving you a hard time? She was giving me a hard time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You have to- That's what he does.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the board workshop, April 24th, 2018, 6:30 p.m. First of all, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and thank you. Okay, second on our agenda is a presentation dealing with our special education update. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Olson.
Great, thank you, Mr. Lawson.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for coming in early to work with me today. I always enjoy April because I actually get to myself. And I have a little bit of time to kind of delve into the things that I don't typically get a chance to talk with everyone about. So I really focused on areas that maybe we need a little more information on, and some updates as well, updates in areas that have changed even since January. So that's part of my goal for tonight. And throughout this whole presentation, certainly ask questions. Don't wait until the end, because I think it probably will be more beneficial if we just ask them as they come up. Any questions? All right. Why don't I start with the demographics, year-to-year comparison between where we're at right now and where we project to be in the fall. And so if you look at the total number, which is really what I want you to focus on right now, is we're at 532. We're projected to be at 536 students identified as special ed. This doesn't take into consideration, though, any of the referrals. And a referral is when you identify a student with suspected need. Some of them do actually become eligible for special ed, others don't. So I'll get into
IDEP total.
special ed, not 504, yeah. So if you look at Hill and Plain, first of all, we have 39 students total right now, plus 3 new referrals, and we're projected to have 35 students starting in the fall. That doesn't include any students moving into district with IEPs, as well as those 3 referrals. I also want to back up to this slide just for 1 minute. You can see that we're status quo. We have 4 more students, most likely, possibly more, to start the school year. But overall, our overall demographics, K-12, are being reduced by about 51 students. So our numbers of special ed students, the percentage of students identified with IEPs will most likely go up next year based on this. So Hill and Plain. Northville definitely has more students right now that have been identified as special ed. You can see the total of 51 right now for this year, plus 5 new referrals. Maybe half of them will be identified, maybe all 5 will, and we're projected to have 47 to start the school year. Sarah Noble. Sarah Noble has 132 students. You have to remember, though, that's all grades 3, 4, and 5. And they have 23 referrals right now. So 23 students could possibly be added to that 132. And I think there are a few different reasons why that number for 3rd, 4th, and 5th is typically higher. The curriculum does get more meaty. It becomes more inferential. Also, our SRBI process is in the works in the younger grades, and so oftentimes they're not referred until we've really exhausted all of our different resources and measures through SRBI, and then we do go to a referral for special ed. The other piece of it, too, is we don't want to over-identify kids when they're too little. We want to wait and give them time to mature, to develop, and to, really access some of the intervention strategies that are available through general ed. But 23 is a pretty high number, so we can anticipate that Sarah Noble will start with higher numbers than 126.
Laura, when you say referral, you
special ed category?
Correct.
Whether it's from a teacher or a parent or both?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
But on that point, some of those referrals move and some don't.
Exactly.
Correct.
Some actually, they find, it's a rule-out process more than it's a rule-in. They will
Right.
find that they're not eligible for special
Right.
education, or they will. So it really depends. Statistically, I would say at least 50% of those students are going to qualify for special ed with an IEP, so. Schaghticoke, right now they have 146 and 8 new referrals. And this is where you really see a jump. If you look at high school, right now we have 153 students, but we're projected to be at 185 for the start of the school year. So we have an 8th grade group that's very large right now. And so when we talk at operations or with Ellie or whatever about shifting staffing, this is a classic example of why we would shift staff, why we would need to bring in maybe more speech and language here, shift it from Schaghticoke, shift a special ed teacher, shift paraeducators. It's all based on those numbers and the needs of the students. And a number is a number, but there's always more to it. It could be the complexity of the students and the needs of the students as well. So, but that is significant. Over 32 students are going to be moving up to the high school. We've done a lot of planning, a lot of transitioning already. We're anticipating a smooth transition for those students, it's all in that pre-planning and communication piece. So in terms of ODP, I just wanted to give you an update because I know that was a focus of the budget presentation when we talked about it and the budget concerns about making sure that we had projected accurately. We're still on target. That 39 right now that we have for out-of-district placements, private and public, is fairly accurate. We've had a few students move in, but we've also had a few students move out. So as I speak tonight, we're consistently projecting where we need to be. Okay, and again, our time with non-disabled peers. Again, this is a reflection of all the good work and the things that are working behind the scenes, such as co-teaching, such as accurate identification, such as literacy training for our teachers, improved test scores. All those things are adding to that time with non-disabled peers. So that's something that the district should be very proud of because it's not an easy feat. So in the area of mental health, I wanted to focus a little bit more tonight on some of the things that we're doing as a district that you might not be aware of, some of it you might be aware of. You know that since 2015-16, we've increased the social workers by 2 full-time social workers. This is year 2 of Effective School Solutions, which continues to be a real asset to the school district. And as time is going on, I'm feeling that they're really embedded in the culture of the high school, that they're looked upon as a resource, they're looked upon as part of the team, which is compliments to the high school staff, but also to the ESS clinicians, because I think that they are very student-centered and they're very skilled at what they do. Parents as Partners continues to focus sometimes. Some of their topics are on mental health needs, and I'll get into that a little bit in another slide. But Mental Health Forum, which I also will get into in a little bit, but that's really building capacity within the school district. So we have a forum of related service staff, school social workers, psychologists, guidance people, and they set their agenda for the school year, topics that they know they're concerned about, things that they need to be trained on, that they need to train the teachers on. So at the beginning of the year, when we have those early PD days, they actually come together and they set their agenda as far as what they believe are topics that are urgent and pressing for the school district and for the families. We continue to be members of the NOVA. It's a regional crisis team. They have meetings monthly, and our staff always attend. They learn, they collaborate, they network, and they really reach out to other school districts. So that happens at Western Connecticut once a month. And then they bring that information back to their school districts, whether it be working one-on-one with a family or a student, or it could be even working, maybe doing a presentation at a staff meeting. So it really depends on the topics. And then we have our substance abuse counselor, primarily at the high school, but we had positioned her at Schaghticoke also for a period of time, just because there were some needs there. So she continues to be a full-time position due to your support. And then the full-time behaviorist, the BCBA, has been a huge asset for the school district, and she's really been able to get in and create behavior plans and functional behavioral analysis to really shape behaviors for kids. Because we are seeing the early K-2 students who are really demonstrating some significant needs that we're just not always equipped or prepared to deal with. And actually, the ESS program at the high school, there are different models now that are beginning throughout the state of Connecticut that are addressing K-2 and having ESS at K-2 schools, which is an interesting approach and probably really effective. So I would like to visit and find out more information on that.
So the behaviorist is for all schools?
All schools.
Do I send the 2 social workers where?
This 2 social workers, one is shared between the 2 elementaries, and then the other one is at Scotticoke. But as we've said before, you could never have enough, but they're doing a great job. So student performance, just very briefly, I looked at the well, actually not briefly, I've looked at the NWEA testing, which is administered fall, winter, and spring. And we continue to work very hard at creating programs that will really close that educational gap for our kids. And so I want to share with you just some of the different filters for what we're seeing. So if you look at over time, 2014-15, special ed is the blue, and you go all the way up to our current spring testing in the area of literacy or reading. We are definitely making slow but steady gains in the percentages of students who are taking the test. And so if you look at the trend line from 29.4 to 34.6, we're definitely on an upward trend, and that's what we want to see. I had worked with Michael Klein, our data person, and he had actually mentioned to me that, we've missed 2 full weeks of school. We've had over, I think, 11 snow days. So if you look at that in terms of instructional opportunity for the kids, it's a half month of school. So we couldn't delay the testing, but we could be looking at even higher scores if we'd had those not snow days. And these are students who are functioning in the 50 percentile or better in the area of reading. And again, you look at your special ed who are blue, and you look at your general ed students. But the gap is closing. You're looking at a 7-point increase for special ed, and you're looking at a 5-point increase for general ed. And that's what we want to see. We want to be able to see closing that educational gap for students with disabilities. And then the same thing for math. Math, actually, we've done quite well in the area of students with disabilities. We've gone, over 7 percentage points increased. And same thing with percentiles, over 50 percentile. In the 50th percentile or greater for students with disabilities, so you're looking at 11.8% all the way up to 20.4%. Which is, those are significant gains for our kids.
Laura, so question if I could. For these percentiles, this is averaging all 3 testings?
Yes, well, the math and then the reading.
So they sit in the
Yes.
fall, winter, and spring. So we're averaging those. And then if I play it through 2014, 15, 16, you actually have the same cohort for most of this. I mean, you might be dropping, let's say this,
1 grade.
one
right.
grade each year,
Eighth
and you're
graders
picking
in
up new
kindergarten.
kids. So you're testing, for the most part, it's, is it kindergarten through or second, kindergarten through 8?
Through 8th, yeah.
So you're really testing the same
The
cohort,
same.
the majority.
Right.
So the fact that you're showing some growth with the same cohort could be some bit indicative.
Right. And now this one doesn't show the spring, fall, and winter, but the previous slides, I think, had them. No, they didn't have them separated.
Because, I mean, if you're retaining the same special ed cohort, the way I look at that, is you have 9 grades of students, you're essentially testing the same 8 kids and the same 7 kids with some filter in each year with new kids coming in. So,
Higher
I don't know.
expectations, harder curriculum,
Right.
more challenging reading and math.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's encouraging. It's,
Yep.
Any questions about the data or?
Just the time frame. Is it spring and fall and winter and spring, or
Fall, winter, and
Is it
spring.
all
And the
of the- all
spring,
of
they
these
did
are through
already.
these?
Yeah, it's
do
completed.
all of the slides?
Mhm.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the IDEA grant. Every year, we receive it. It's, it's an entitlement grant, and we've always been in compliance with the mandates under IDEA. We've never had to give money back, nor have we ever been identified as being it's called maintenance of effort, is that we have to make sure that we're giving students what they deserve through IDEA. So we've done quite well with that. So we have two different grants, and in May, I'll be able to really detail it for you, because that's when the grant is rolled out, and then that's during operations, and Board of Ed will actually delineate where all the cost centers are. And then the non-public funding for Faith Prep and Canterbury, those are areas that we're mandated to provide services for. We have to give them a proportional share of the grant, depending on the number of students that are actually placed in those schools. So we provide service plans, which is more of a minimal support through special education, tutoring. We have a part-time teacher at Faith Academy right now, and then we provide tutoring at Canterbury. So those are pieces of the grant that we have to make sure that we provide. The first part of the grant is the largest part. It's, as you can see, it's $871,000, and it covers all of the following areas. A lot of our in-service comes through the grant, which is a great opportunity for us to continue to train our teachers. A small portion of our OT comes from the grant, our parent activities. We have our IEP all online programs all through the grant, literacy training, travel, assistive technology. But I will say the bulk of this grant, over 80% of it is staffing. So as our staffing increases, the amount of grant available for any other types of services is reduced. So we've been able to maintain it, though, over the years. But it's just something that I'm always aware of to make sure that we still have money available for the other important things. So, and then we have a preschool grant. It's a 619 grant, and again, you can see that's $34,000, but the bulk of it again is in staffing. There's some in-service, some pupil services, assistive technology, and parent activities.
Slide, this fell under ages 3 through 5, so that's the.
Right.
That's the pre-K through, oh, just the pre-K?
3 through 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Our Excel programs.
Yeah.
That's basically what it provides support for and services for. Okay, so when I just want to look at this through a different lens, because there are a lot of things that we do through my department, through the school district, that you don't always see. And they're very effective cost-saving measures or cost avoidance measures, which I think we need to be aware of. The first one is the ESS program at the high school. We continue to maintain it by keeping kids in our district, and those aren't necessarily numbers or costs that you're going to see right away, but working with them very closely, there are a number of students that they've been able to really maintain and keep in the high school, and a number of them have graduated or will graduate this year from ESS and graduate from high school in 4 years, which, I'm not a betting person, but I would say that the chances of this happening without this type of a program would be pretty slim. So.
How many students are currently in ESS?
Right now, there are 16. It can go as high as 18. In fact, we just met with Scaticoke staff a few days ago to find out who their students are and who they would be recommending for the referral process. So as the high school kids start either graduating or developing those coping skills themselves, it frees up spots for other students. And the best case scenario is to get someone in 9th grade, because then you really do have time with them and you can really build that trust and that working relationship with the family. And so that's always what we're looking for. So that is definitely cost savings, cost avoidance.
Just curious on that, on the 16 that we have, is that on average, or have we been higher, have we been lower?
We've been as high as 18.
Okay.
And it depends. There are situations too where we can't manage
Of
them
course.
in the high school, and
Of
so
course.
maybe they're hospitalized for a period of
course.
time. Or, in a few situations, they've been placed out of district because we're not able to really meet their needs. And then there are other kids that really get on just more of a maintenance level, which is a wonderful thing to see because they just check in with the ESS staff, but they don't actually fill a spot. And they've been very flexible with us in terms of that. They might just do a check-in or individual counseling once a week, but they're not counted as one of the 18, so. So that's very positive.
I know last year around this time, we had this presentation and ESS, and I remember seeing a number of $112,000 per student that was here. That was a cost avoidance piece. And then people in the public, I just want to
Yeah.
say, people in the public would play that number out.
Right.
And to say, okay, you've got 18 students, that's a cost avoidance of $2 million.
Right.
Now, I take some bit of umbrage to that number because it doesn't sound right that every one of these 18 students would have a $112,000
Right,
average
right,
outplacement.
right,
So I don't know if you wanted to help clarify that number, because I know it was in this presentation last year.
It was
And-
April of last year, we had the
Yes.
same presentation.
And I just go back to that number, and I know we're paying $275,000, or $75,000 for the ESS program, a little bit now, a little bit more than that. But to play that number out, I have to feel that that can't be correct.
It's not accurate. So the range of placing a student at a therapeutic school could go anywhere from 48,000 all the way up to 112 or 100, depending, and with transportation. So that gives you a range, but by far, not all of those 18 students would require an out-of-district placement. When we first started the program last year, we did bring students back. We brought, I want to say, 3 or 4 students back, 3 at least, possibly 4. So that was a huge cost savings for the district. We're not going to see that number again. We're just not, because what we're doing now is we're seeing them in 9th grade. We're getting the interventions earlier. And I don't predict that that's going to happen. So to answer your question, no, that wasn't accurate. I think that it's cost avoidance at this point.
Right.
I think what we talked about when we brought them in, one of the pieces, if we only brought back, of those 18, if we only brought back or avoided sending 2 out at a potential cost of 100,000, the program would pay for itself. And I think that's the kind of concept that, with 18 students potentially, or the 16, even if each of those cost 40,000, they'd be below the threshold for reimbursement. But if we avoid sending 2 out or 3 out at the 80 or 100,000. I think the idea is that this program, although it's expensive as a line item in the budget, the potential cost of not having it is far greater. But to put an actual dollar amount on it is a very nebulous kind of conversation.
Right, and I appreciate the element too of the reimbursement, right? Because right now, our reimbursement stands at about 64, 65, I don't know.
Right, 64.
Right, our excess cost reimbursement, so even if you had $112,000, 2 of those, you would still have
Right.
excess cost, I would
Right.
think you would file for
Right.
and try to proceed, so.
Right.
um,
Now,
no,
I know
that's-
next year already, we're bringing 1 student back who we're planning on. We're bringing actually 3 students back, but only 1 of them requires ESS.
Okay.
So those are the types of things that you're not always going to see, and that's why I'm pleased to know right now that our numbers for ODP are staying fairly consistent, because it's just, it can change so quickly.
Right. Thanks for helping clarify.
LHTC continues to keep our students in district, ages 18 to 21. Terrific program, gives our students opportunities to work out in job sites and develop skills at their level so that when they age out, they're going to be able to be active, functioning people in our community. The other piece that you might not be aware of too is that there's a lot of transportation ride sharing, and I use the term ride sharing kind of loosely, but if we have a student who's placed at an out-of-district program, we might have 4 students placed at that program, and so they all use the same transportation vendor and typically the same transportation. So that's a huge cost savings. Transportation can go quite high. Just for 1 student, it can be as high as $40,000. So when we have 4 students on that run, it reduces it from 40,000 to 10,000, which also impacts your ability to get excess cost, but ultimately you're still saving money. And then we also have registered behavior technicians. This is a fairly new title throughout the country, but they're very sought after. So we are training our staff, our student care workers, to become behavior technicians. So they have a higher level of skill in dealing with some of the real aggressive, non-compliant behaviors, kids who might need ABA training. So right now we're using an online program and supervision from our BCBAs, and so we're building capacity. That's what I want you to take away, is that we're building capacity within the district to really train our own people and provide services and supports for our students. And then finally, we had a DLET survey that came in and showed us, this was a while ago, this was actually with Ms. DeCorpo, but that we needed to really shore up our reading interventions for our students K-3. And due to that, and partly due to that, we brought in a very high-quality program called Foundations, and it's multisensory, and it's really for kids who are just not meeting those benchmarks at an early grade. We've been teaching our teachers, they've been coached by Foundations, they've been, actually they had a training today. So they're very excited about it, they're starting to see the data come back already, showing good results for our kids in that early literacy piece. And I expect that we're going to start seeing some real results in our more standardized testing for the kids too. So that's another piece. Okay, professional development, I'm just going to go through quickly. There are a lot of things happening in the district. Some of them we can embed, we can train the trainer, others we actually have to go out for. But in the area of mental health, these are just a few of the things that our social workers, psychologists, and guidance people have been very busy with. And I don't know if you know, but at each school we have a crisis team, and it's developed by the building principal along with the support staff, but it's a team that's comprised of people who have skills to not only de-escalate behaviors, but also, if they need to physically manage behaviors. And they're very important, and they have a way, they have their own communication system, they have a way of really getting to the needs of the kids. And then we find needs based on our kids. For example, the PANS training. It's a very complex, specific disorder that some of our children have. It's an autoimmune disorder. And so we brought someone in just to train just for that, and we earmarked just the staff that are going to be working with these students. So it was very specialized, but it was really important because these types of issues and complex kids come through our system, and we want to make sure we're doing everything we can and that we're informed. And then we just had 3 of our social workers go all the way to New London for a weekend on their own. they did it on their own. They didn't. They did it because they wanted to improve their practice and help kids. So they're basically coming back to the district, and they're going to be helping us train parents on how to parent in a positive way, because that early intervention piece, with not only with our kids but with our parents, is really key to helping with some of these mental health issues.
How are they going to train the parents?
Well, that's a good question.
Because, most of the time the parents who need it don't come.
Right.
That's it.
So, and I think sometimes group training doesn't work because you're exactly right that they won't show up. So I think in terms of what really would make sense, and they're meeting actually as a group this week, but to really look at a specific identified needs. Let's say a set of parents need help with managing their child at home or in the community, and
break them down.
so then they work with them
Right.
individually.
That makes sense.
That's really I think the most effective way when there are issues with parenting, because
So how are they going to get the parents to come? Is it like, please come, or, if your kid's going to has an IEP, you have to come and spend 2 hours with us,
a lot of it's about building relationships with
Right.
these families
Okay,
and
so there's a
working with them.
possibility all the great things won't happen.
That what?
That all the great things that you want to do won't happen because the parents don't trust or don't want to have that
I always
relationship.
believe that there's a way. I
Okay.
think that's why I'm
Can
in
you
this
think
job.
outside the box?
But I
You
do
get
think that building that relationship, picking up that phone, meeting them for coffee at Starbucks, these are social work type of things.
Right.
But really building those relationships and saying, you know what, how about if I come to the house? How about if we do this? And it's trust, and a lot of it is education, because some of these parents are just not equipped yet to be parents. And the more that we can share with them and train them and model for them
And
and
remind
just
them
listen
that
to
it's a
them.
help and not a finger pointing session, I
Exactly.
think is
So
really.
actually, the
Exactly.
first meeting that you have is where you first build that first block of trust. I mean, that's the way I look at it. If parents coming into an IEP, or if there's a concern and they're coming in, that's where it starts.
It could. Or we could identify a weakness later. We could be at a PPT and the social worker's there and mom is saying, I really struggle with this or this. Or we notice that there are some gaps in behavior even at school, and that might be an opportunity. And that's what's great about our social workers and our psychologists, is that they really do have those skills to get into those situations, and it is about building relationships with people.
And that's why I said the first meeting
Yeah.
is where that first block is made.
It could, yeah.
If you don't make it at that first meeting, 2 months down the road, it ain't gonna happen. Or it's gonna be harder to get over that barrier.
It might be harder.
You know,
The
so-
longer you wait with anything like this, the more challenging it becomes, so you're right.
To your point though, Bill, parents with special needs kids are sometimes so hungry for help and training and trying to figure out what's the best way to parent a child who's good. A lot of these people will show up because they just are at such a loss. There's so many, there's not a lot of things out there for them, so they usually will jump on anything that's free, essentially, to come, so.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of the parent workshops, and one was really well attended and a couple others weren't. you
Were
know.
they special ed, or were they?
Oh, yeah,
or
well,
they were-
it had to deal with, kids who have special behavioral issues and stuff. So I understand what you're saying, but
You'd like to see more participation.
well, I'd like to, there are a group of parents that will never trust the process, or have a difficult time, I should say, should never. So, I mean, the parent that's struggling will come right away. The parent who thinks my kid's fine, and you're intruding in my life, those are the ones that are difficult, and those are the ones that have to be there.
Some of the inroads sometimes are kids that aren't coming to school.
Right.
And let's say attendance becomes a real issue, and the social worker could say, well, how about if I make a home visit? How about if I come out and see how you're doing, and in a very unobtrusive way, but a way that, lends a hand and gets out there into the home. But that is a red flag to us, and that's sometimes a perfect opportunity to really find out what's going on at home. And then you can build training. We have a lot of, like even kindergarten, first grade students, and the parents are really struggling with parenting. So typically they're amenable to it. Once in a while, though, there's still, everything's okay. So. And then in the area of professional co-teaching, we continue to forge ahead with it. Relationships that started 2 years ago for co-teachers, we're trying to promote and continue to have those teaching combinations. We had a number of different trainings this year. One of them was for new people to co-teaching, because we have new staff that come in, or new people that are co-teaching. We can't just expect for them to just understand and to be able to pick it up and do it. So we have training for them. We also had training for advanced co-teachers, people who have been doing it for a few years but really need to enhance their skills or want to enhance their skills. So they went to that. And then thirdly, we did have, she's actually nationally recognized, she's the guru of co-teaching, Dr. Marilyn Friend, and there was a large group from New Milford that went to hear her speak, and they were really motivated and just walked away with new learning and very, very good information, so they went to that. And then finally, literacy. We do a lot with literacy always. This is just a sampling. We had our foundations training. We have, literacy is kind of the new buzzword now. It's no longer reading. It's really all the different areas of reading development. And so we have to stay up to speed with everything that the state is expecting in terms of dyslexia and making sure that we're making progress in that area. IEP writing, we continue to work hard on developing better, more data-driven IEPs that really meet the needs of kids and can be measured. And then we also had a number of staff who went away for a 4-day training on literacy, and they came back with having to be videotaped and having to submit videos and having to actually go through a number of different challenging criteria, and now they're certified as literacy consultants. And then finally, our multisensory reading workshops. We're offering them all the time because, as I said, teachers come in, new teachers get trained, and we just want to make sure that our kids are always getting what they need. Mental health forum, real quickly. I did talk about this, how they develop their own agenda, but, you know, it was interesting to see what they came up with this year. Obviously, it's based on what they're saying as needs. And then the other one that I didn't add was they had someone come in and talk to all of us about neurofeedback, which is kind of an up-and-coming way to deal with behavioral challenges, depression. So the more we know, the more we can help, and the more that we can inform and move progress. And then parents as partners, as Bill said, some were well-attended, some weren't. But, you know, we're always working on trying to meet the needs and listen to our families. And so the first one was about behavior. And actually, we had a fairly good turnout. I want to say it was 35 or 40. The second one, though, was interesting because we don't post these things as special ed parents. It's really open to everyone, and that's what we're hoping. And this second one, you know, some of the parents that came had students in TAG, identified as TAG, and it's really about that ADHD, executive functioning, kids who weren't classified special education. And I want to say we had close to 90 family members for that one as well. And our staff sometimes attend too, which is really good to see. The last one, again, I talk about sometimes really being specific with the training. And this last one it's about sensory issues with parents of young children or even not so young children who have trouble feeding them or their child has trouble eating. Very specific. Do I expect a high turnout? No, I don't. But are we going to be able to help parents? Yes. So it's all about getting that word out to the ones who really need it. Bill?
See, I heard, I like the title, but someone explained to me it's going to be about ritualistic eating.
It could be.
Okay. Well, that's important because that's the first step
Ritualistic eating, yeah.
to eating disorders. You know, that's the progression, ritualistic
There,
and eating
that
disorders.
actually encompasses a lot, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think if it was titled like ritualistic eating, you might have more parents show up because that's a lot of parents deal with their kids who eat macaroni and cheese 3 times a day. Okay, kids that stay away from certain foods because of the texture.
Right, the tactile.
Okay, and a little bit of research I've done into eating disorders, those are all the precursors to a possible eating disorder. Doesn't mean it's going to be, but those are the warning signs that you have, and that's a big issue. You know, in
I
my
made
mind.
note of it.
Yeah, I agree with Bill that the first title is good, but help my child struggling, I understand that, but parent might not understand
Right.
executive functioning, what
Right.
are we talking about there? So,
Right.
no more. We can talk about it later. Parent appropriate.
You should title it "How to Get My Kid Not to Raid My Pantry" because you would bill the
Some parents want their kids to read the
Exactly,
pantry.
that's what I was gonna say.
Last
So
week-
we're always looking, what?
I'm sorry, Marie Alcock, she was speaking last week, and she said, you know, if you're trying to get parents in, you give them brain research to look at, right? And essentially, you use that as your opportunity to teach parents, right? Which is, it sounds like what you are doing, right? But if you have something that's like, I didn't know that, I think as a parent, be like, wow, that could be really helpful. And then that, to Bill's point, that helps build that trust. Like, not only are we trying to educate your children, but we're also trying to educate the community and the public. So, you know, I got to think that it was kind of an interesting piece of advice that she had given to a room of people. But it was like, bring brain research in. From the 1990s on, there has been so much great brain research, and a lot of people, when they were in school, didn't understand
Right.
what we understand now.
Right. Well, even last year, we had Dr. Queenan come in and he talked about anxiety, he talked about brain-based, you know, research that had been done in terms of anxiety, and it was really an eye-opener, and a lot of it was new learning for all of us, because that's just not typically our mindset, so,
Do you have a date for that May presentation?
not yet, we have to, yeah.
I've been looking for it.
The other piece of it too is, you know, engaging parents and making it comfortable for them. We offer childcare, you know, free childcare, snacks, games. I mean, as much as we can do to make
Right.
them,
It's really good.
you know, the obstacles are eliminated. Focus areas, I think I covered this in my budget presentation, but again, mental health is a targeted area, the literacy training, continuing with our BCBA, co-teaching outcomes, the IEP rubric, and all of it really leads to time with non-disabled peers, if that makes sense to you, because the more that we include our students to the degree possible, the more that we're going to see some of these other things also improve. So this was the first year. We did it in conjunction with the mayor's office. It was the Autism Walk. I don't know if you knew about it. But it was a few Saturdays ago. And anyway, it was just a neat way to collaborate with the community. There were a number of parents that came out, especially for the first year. I did end up showing up, and it was really heartwarming, and it was also really driven by the families, which was really nice. The high school staff actually organized it, but so many of the families that are friends and work together, and it was just really, it was a great turnout. And this was one of their mascots. I thought that was cute. It is Autism Speaks, Cape. This is my office. Excel preschool kids. This was on Autism Day, National Autism Day too, but not all of them wore blue, but they all have smiles on their faces. So. And then Unified Sports, again, continues to build momentum. It's become part of the culture at Sarah Noble, Schaghticoke, and the high school. Again, feeling of, empathy, understanding, leadership, all of those skills that all of our kids need. So I thought that was kind of a neat picture. I think that was at Schaghticoke, and that was during basketball season. Sarah Noble kids, Sarah Noble. Schaghticoke actually had people on the sidelines with posters cheering them on, which I thought was kind of neat, and took that upon themselves. Schaghticoke basketball, and then finally the high school. So that's it. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I think we have a little bit of time. I don't know if we do. Any questions?
Just going back to the beginning, I was curious, can you talk about a little bit of discrepancy between Helen Plain and Northville as far as the number of students? I think it was one of your first slides. I'm just curious, as far as the identification process goes, is there a consistent identification across those buildings, or is it different by building?
No, it is. We have to go through the same batteries of tests. Our school psychologists sometimes are even the same. It's interesting to see that there is such a, difference in the numbers. But again, that shift is kind of what will, propel us to really look at staffing. And does Northville need another special ed teacher? Could Hill and Plain reduce one? Same thing with related services. So it's always adjusting and readjusting. And Northville had not always been historically that much higher. They'd always been fairly consistent once we, JPS was out of the combination. So
Just a question. In the old days, between K and 3, a lot of behaviors looked as developmental. And so they were just saying, okay, when he gets older. By the time they get into 4th and 5th grade, then the teachers are pulling their hair out and they get identified. Are we moving away from that? Are we looking at K to 3 behavior that's inappropriate as a possible precursor of something else? Or is it still that mindset, then let's wait to see what happens? Because that could drive the referrals in those two different groups.
That's a great question. I think it depends on the severity of the behavior. I think what we're seeing now are behaviors sometimes that are so dysregulated and are unsafe that we really have to take action. We can't just wait to see if developmentally they're going to outgrow it. And there are those kids that will outgrow it, but I think that in terms of what we're seeing right now in the schools is mood disorders already, preset bipolar, early onset bipolar. We're seeing conduct disorder. We're seeing all of those things that we hadn't seen early on. But for the more mild, they're a little, rambunctious, or they're a little active.
They're boys.
Those maybe.
In those days.
That we're still, looking at CERBI. We're looking at very different types of interventions for those kids.
Yeah, because in my experience, I've seen a lot of kids who struggled, and if they had early intervention, by high school they would have been functioning a lot better. Like you're saying with the ESS, the kids move out, and so I think what you're doing is really, really good. I think the emphasis on the early is really helpful for kids, it really is.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Did I use up all my questions yet?
You got 5 more.
Yeah, only 2 more. I'm curious, just a clarification question. The annual reviews, are those just rolling as far as when annual reviews are conducted for for special ed students?
Right, they're done anytime throughout the school year. They can even be done during the summer, but we try and avoid that just because we don't want to bring staff in for that. Yeah, they continue to, that trajectory toward increasing definitely is still there. I know you and I talked, and I had a slide for the budget, presentation earlier, but it's, and it's not a bad thing, it's just that it's a huge resource on our staff.
Well, and yeah, that's the thing too, like, some schools will have it, like, they all pile up into the spring, you're trying to do all of them. But one of the reasons the motivation for maybe asking that question is, do you have students when you're exiting those students, right? That they could be exited anywhere along throughout the school year, really, right? And like, a lot of times maybe you'll see seniors, I don't know if you're seeing this, but like seniors who are being exited and go to 504s, but, or they're juniors that are being exited, it might be in October, it might be in, December, those students are then out of special ed, maybe they go to 504, but, so there's a timeline for that to happen at different times of the year. Based on
And it
your
could
data.
happen at any time. I think that, the staff are good at really identifying it, and especially at that triennial every 3-year evaluation, but it can happen at any time. And that's why data is our friend, because we can really look at the data and look at the goals and objectives, and if they've mastered them, well, you know what? Congratulations, then, you need to fly.
Right, and that's the goal, right?
It is.
Yep.
I trust you'll welcome questions, if we can contact you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How'd you get the pencil stuck on this?
Oh, so I have to tell you, this is, every year Litchfield Hills kids do this, and they taped them on.
They taped it on?
They taped them on. And they,
I know.
Eye doctor. Ah, there it goes.
Moved.
Okay,
Sorry.
anyone want to second it?
Second.
Okay.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
So John.